Your married coworker just closed on a 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood you can't even afford to get coffee in. They're showing you the listing on their phone during lunch break, scrolling through photos of granite countertops and a backyard big enough for the dog they're planning to adopt. Their combined income is maybe $120,000. You make $75,000. You're not irresponsible with money. You don't have credit card debt. You brown bag your lunch for days a week. And yet somehow you're paying $1,800 a month to live in a 1-bedroom apartment with a kitchen so small you can touch the stove and the fridge simultaneously. Meanwhile, their mortgage payment is $1,600 for a house that's triple the size. How is that fair? Spoiler alert, it's not fair. And it's not you. It's the math. And the math has been rigged against single people since before you were born. My name is Nick, and today we're talking about something nobody wants to acknowledge. Being single in 2026 is financially punishing in ways that would make medieval tax collectors blush. This isn't about dating advice or relationship goals. This is about cold hard economics. We're going to calculate exactly how much extra money you're hemorrhaging every single year simply because you don't have a partner to split bills with. And by the end of this, you're going to understand why the American dream was never designed for people flying solo. Let's start with the most obvious cost, housing. If you're single and renting in any halfway decent city, you need to find a place on your own. A 2-bedroom apartment costs maybe $2,400 a month. A 1-bedroom costs $1,800. You'd think cutting a bedroom would cut the price in half, right? Wrong. You're paying 75% of the cost for 50% of the space. That's not a discount. That's a scam with a lease agreement. But your married friends, they're splitting that $2,400 two ways. They're each paying $1,200. You're paying $1,800 for less space, worse amenities, and the joy of doing all your own dishes. They're saving $600 a month compared to you. That's $7,200 a year just on rent. We haven't even started talking about utilities, internet, or the fact that you're buying a full-sized container of laundry detergent that'll last you 6 months because there's no economy of scale in being alone. Now, let's talk about food, because this is where it gets insulting. Grocery stores are designed for families. Everything is sold in bulk. The 24-pack of paper towels is half the per-unit cost of the 6-pack. The Familis's bag of rice is a third of the price per pound compared to the small one. But you can't buy the bulk size because you're one person. That rice will go stale. Those paper towels will sit in your closet for 2 years. So you pay the singles tax at the grocery store every single week. You're paying roughly 30% more per unit on almost everything compared to someone splitting a Costco membership with a spouse. And don't even get me started on meal planning. Recipes are written for 4 servings. You're cooking for 1. You either eat the same thing for 4 days straight or you throw away half of what you buy. Either way, you're getting destroyed on food costs. A single person spends an average of $450 a month on groceries for meals that a couple could make for $600 total. Per person, they're spending $300. You're spending $450. That's another $1,800 a year down the drain. Let's move to something nobody talks about, insurance. Car insurance companies charge single people more. Statistically, married people are seen as more responsible drivers. I'm not making this up. You can have a perfect driving record, but if you check the single box, you're paying a premium. Homeowners insurance works the same way. Life insurance costs more. Health insurance, if you're buying it on the marketplace, doesn't get the benefit of a family plan discount. You're subsidizing everyone else's lower rates. Then there's the tax code. This is where the government openly admits they don't care about you. The standard deduction for a single filer in 2026 is $15,300. For a married couple filing jointly, it's $29,200. That's exactly double, right? Seems fair. Except it's not, because 2 single people living separately would get $29,200 combined in deductions. But a married couple living in one house gets the same benefit while splitting all their costs. They're being rewarded for consolidation, and you're being penalized for independence. And if you're in a higher tax bracket, the pain gets worse. The married filing jointly brackets are nearly double the single brackets up to a certain income level. Translation: the government looked at single people and said, you know what? They can afford to pay more. Why? Because the entire tax system was built in the 1950s when the assumption was everyone gets married, has 2.5 kids, and buys a house with a white picket fence. If you're not following that script, you're a glitch in the system, and glitches get taxed. But the cruelest part isn't the money you're spending. It's the opportunities you're missing. Your married friends are building equity. They bought that house because two incomes made them eligible for a mortgage. You could never qualify for a loan. Even if you make decent money, even if you're financially responsible, the banks look at your single income and say it's not enough. You need to make $85,000 just to afford a $1,800 rent payment under the 30% rule. But to buy a $400,000 house, you'd need to make $120,000 because now there's a down payment, closing costs, and a mortgage qualification standards. Your married coworker making $60,000 combined with their spouse's $60,000 gets the house. You making $75,000 alone get to keep renting. They're accumulating wealth. You're making your landlord wealthy. This is the compounding effect of the singles tax. It's not just that you're paying more now. It's that paying more now prevents you from building the assets that would make you pay less later. So, where does this leave you? Statistically, if you're single and living alone, you're spending about $10,000 more per year than a partnered person spending the same lifestyle. That's rent premiums, food waste, insurance markups, and tax penalties all stacked together. Over a decade, that's $100,000 that vanished into the void simply because you didn't have someone to split the bills with. But here's what nobody tells you when they're selling you the rom-com version of life. That $10,000 annual penalty isn't a fixed cost you just accept and move on from. It's a compounding trap that gets exponentially worse the longer you stay single. Because that money you're hemorrhaging on the singles tax, that's money you're not investing. That's money that isn't growing. That's money that will never compound. Let's run a simulation that will make you nauseous. Take two people, both 25 years old, both making $65,000 a year. Person A gets married at 26. Person B stays single until 35. Person A immediately benefits from the marriage subsidy. Their rent drops because they're splitting a one-bedroom instead of each paying for separate studios. They save $800 a month. They invest that $800 into a basic index fund averaging 7% returns. Person B keeps paying full freight on everything. No savings to invest. Fast forward to age 35. Person A has been investing $800 monthly for 9 years with compound interest. That's roughly $110,000 in their brokerage account. Person B has zero. They spent that entire decade just trying to keep their head above water, paying the premium for existing alone. But it gets darker. At 35, Person B finally gets married. Great, right? Now they can start saving too. Except Person A's $110,000 is still growing at 7% annual returns. That money doubles roughly every 10 years without them adding another dime. By retirement at 65, that initial 9-year advantage has turned into over $850,000. Person B starts investing the same $800 monthly at age 35. They do it for 30 years straight, twice as long as Person A's initial contribution period. At retirement, they'll have around $980,000. They invested $188,000 of their own money. Person A invested only $86,400 of their own money, but ended up with almost as much purely because they started earlier. The singles tax didn't just cost Person B $10,000 a year in living expenses. It cost them nearly $1 million in lost compounding opportunity. This is why financial advisors tell you to start investing young. But what they don't tell you is that staying single makes starting young nearly impossible for most people. You're too busy paying the existence premium to build the foundation. Now, let's talk about something even more insidious. The psychological warfare of being single in a couple's economy. You know that feeling when you're the only single person at a dinner party and everyone's talking about their mortgage rates and their joint financial planning sessions? That's not just awkward. That's your brain processing the reality that you're playing a different game with different rules and nobody wants to acknowledge it. Society gaslights single people constantly. You'll hear things like just budget better or maybe cut back on the DoorDash. As if your financial struggles are a character flaw rather than a mathematical inevitability. Your married friend will genuinely suggest you try meal prepping, completely unaware that they're meal prepping for two people in a kitchen they own. Splitting the grocery bill while you're trying to justify buying the family size anything when you know half of it will rot in your fridge before you finish it. The worst part, the advice industrial complex profits from your confusion. Financial gurus selling courses on how to hack your way to wealth never mention that their strategies assume you have a partner. The real estate investor preaching about house hacking always has a spouse's income backing their first deal. The retirement calculator asking for your savings rate doesn't have a checkbox for paying 40% more for existing than a married person would. You're supposed to bootstrap your way out of a structural disadvantage that costs you a full-time minimum wage job's worth of income annually. And when you can't, when you're 35 and still renting, and your savings account has $3,000 instead of $30,000, you're told it's because you're not disciplined enough. Here's what discipline actually looks like when you're single. You come home to an empty apartment you're overpaying for. You're exhausted from work. You could order food, but you're trying to save money, so you force yourself to cook. You make one chicken breast, some rice, maybe steam some broccoli if you're feeling ambitious. You eat it alone at your counter because you don't have a dining table because you couldn't justify the space or cost. You do dishes immediately because if you don't, they'll sit there mocking you until tomorrow. You watch half an episode of something, realize you're too tired to focus, and go to bed. That's discipline. That's what financial responsibility looks like when you're subsidizing everyone else's tax breaks and insurance discounts. It's not glamorous. There's no viral TikTok about eating sad chicken alone to save $15. But that's the reality. Meanwhile, your married friends are splitting a Costco rotisserie chicken, letting their kids eat the leftovers for lunch, writing off their home office, and wondering why you seem stressed about money when you make almost as much as they do individually. The system isn't designed for you to win. It's designed for you to struggle just enough that when you do eventually partner up, you feel grateful for the relief rather than angry about the penalty you paid for years. Some of you are thinking, okay, Nick, I get it. I'm screwed. What am I supposed to do? Just accept financial doom? No. But you do need to accept that the standard path isn't available to you at standard prices. You need to get weird with it. The solution isn't romantic. It's mathematical. If you're single and want to stop bleeding money, you need to artificially create the economic benefits of partnership without the relationship. Get a roommate, not a romantic partner. A financially competent roommate who will split the good apartment, the Costco membership, the utilities, and actually pay on time. You'll save $800 to $1,200 monthly immediately. That's the game changer. House hack. If you can buy a duplex, live in one unit, rent the other. Let your tenant pay your mortgage while you stop lighting money on fire on rent. It's harder to qualify for the loan alone, yes, but it's not impossible. You'll need perfect credit and a bigger down payment, but it's the closest thing to opting out of the tax. If buying a duplex isn't in the cards, you need to build what I call a shadow household. In economics, this is called a buying co-op. You find 3 other single friends who are also tired of getting ripped off. You split one Costco membership for ways. One person does the run, buys the industrial-sized paper towels and the 20-pounds bag of rice, and you split the goods in the parking lot like a drug deal. Suddenly, you have access to the bulk pricing without the waste. You aren't paying the 30% markup for the single-serving convenience. It feels ridiculous. No, but paying 40% more for toilet paper because you live alone is ridiculous. This is just rational arbitrage. And if you really want to break the math, you have to look at the map. This is called geographic arbitrage. If you are single and trying to build wealth in New York, San Francisco, or Miami, you are playing the game on nightmare mode. A one-bedroom in a city like Austin, Raleigh, or Pittsburgh might save you $1,500 a month compared to a coastal hub. That is $18,000 a year post-tax. That isn't just savings. That is your entire missing down payment fund appearing out of thin air. Your married friends can justify the expensive city because they are splitting that $3,500 rent. You are eating it alone. If your job is remote or if your industry exists elsewhere, moving is the single fastest way to delete the singles tax from your life. Optimize everything else ruthlessly. You don't get the luxury of paying for convenience. Meal prep. Buy the bulk toilet paper even if it feels ridiculous. Keep your car until the wheels fall off. This isn't about being cheap. This is about refusing to subsidize a system that's penalizing you for existing. And let me tell you what nobody warns you about. This financial penalty doesn't just cost you money today, it compounds. Every year you're single and overpaying for existence is a year you're not investing, not building equity, not letting compound interest work for you. Your married friends aren't just saving $10,000 annually. They're investing that $10,000 in 20 years at a modest 7% return. That's $400,000 in wealth they built simply by splitting rent. You didn't get to build that. You were busy paying the single-person tax. This is why the wealth gap between single people and married people in their 40s and 50s is staggering. It's not because married people work harder or smarter with money. It's because they've been playing the game on easy mode while you've been playing on nightmare difficulty. Every financial milestone they hit, buying a house, maxing out retirement accounts, taking vacations without checking their bank account first, was subsidized by a system that punished you for not having a plus one. The psychological damage is worse than the financial damage. Because when you're 38 and your savings account has $8,000 instead of $80,000, you internalize it as personal failure. You think you're bad with money. You think you should have worked harder, been smarter, made better choices, but the actual math says you would have needed to earn an extra $200, zero over the past decade just to break even with your married counterparts. That's not a personal failing. That's structural violence disguised as lifestyle choice. And society gaslights you about it constantly. Financial advice is written exclusively for households. Every budget template assumes two incomes, or at least shared expenses. Every real estate calculator asks for household income. When you say you can't afford something, people ask if your partner can help. What partner? The imaginary one. I'm supposed to manifest to get a tax break. Dating becomes contaminated by this reality. You start evaluating potential partners partially through an economic lens because you're financially exhausted. Is this person going to be a financial asset or liability? Do they have good credit? Could we actually afford to merge our lives? It's not romantic. It's not what anyone wants. But when you've been financially penalized for being single for years, you can't help but notice that marriage comes with a $10,000 annual raise that has nothing to do with love. Here's what makes this truly perverse. The system pushes you toward partnership for financial survival, but then judges you if your relationship decisions seem economically motivated. Stay single too long and you're financially penalized. Partner up for practical reasons and you're morally suspect. You can't win. The game is rigged in both directions. So, what's the actual move here? How do you survive financially in a system designed for couples when you're solo? First, stop pretending the standard advice applies to you. When some financial guru says you should save 20% of your income, that advice was written for a household with two incomes and shared expenses. Your actual target needs to be 30% or more to achieve the same outcome. It's not fair. It's just math. Second, manufacture the benefits of partnership artificially. Find a financially responsible roommate who is also tired of being gouged. Split the two-bedroom apartment, split the Costco membership, split the utilities, split the streaming services. You're not failures for living like you're 23. You're rational economic actors optimizing for a hostile system. That roommate is worth $800 to $1,200 monthly. That's $10,000 to $14,000 annually. That's your tax refund for being single. Third, if you can't live with someone, build the shadow household. Automate the bulk buying with friends. Stop paying the single-serving convenience tax on every roll of toilet paper. Fourth, look at the map. If the math in your city simply doesn't work, take your income to a city where it does. Geographic arbitrage is the fastest raise you'll ever get. Fifth, if you can possibly swing it, buy property and house hack. Rent out a room or unit. Let someone else pay your mortgage while you stop burning money on rent. It's harder to qualify for the loan alone. The bank will scrutinize your income more carefully. You'll need better credit and a bigger down payment, but it's one of the few ways to actually escape the trap rather than just minimize the damage. Like 6, get aggressive about the hidden costs. You don't get the luxury of convenience. Meal prep religiously. Buy in bulk even when it feels ridiculous. Keep your car maintained so you never face an emergency repair. Cut every subscription you don't actively use weekly. This isn't about being cheap. This is about recognizing that you're playing the game with a 30% handicap and you need to optimize everywhere else. And finally, stop internalizing the shame. You're not failing at adulthood because you have a roommate at 35. You're not financially irresponsible because you can't afford to live alone in a one-bedroom apartment that costs $2,000 to $100 a month. The median single-person income in America cannot afford median single-person housing in most markets. That's not your fault. That's a policy choice that prioritizes married households over individual humans. The real question isn't whether this is fair. It obviously isn't. The question is whether you're going to keep pretending the standard path is available to you or whether you're going to acknowledge reality and root around the damage. You can spend the next decade being angry about the penalty, or you can spend it building wealth despite the penalty. Both feelings are valid. Only one gets you out. This isn't about giving up on partnership or love or whatever you want your life to look like. It's about refusing to financially drown while you wait for the system to stop punishing you. Build the life that makes sense for your actual circumstances, not the circumstances society pretends you have. Get the roommate, buy the duplex, split the Costco membership, stack your money ruthlessly, and when you do eventually partner up, if you do, you'll do it from a position of strength rather than desperation. That's worth more than any tax break. The math doesn't care about your relationship status. The tax code doesn't care that you're waiting for the right person. The insurance company definitely doesn't care that you're focusing on your career right now. They just see a single filer checkbox and charge accordingly. You can either keep paying the penalty and hoping the system becomes fair, or you can stop playing by rules that were written to punish you. Get the roommate, buy the duplex, split everything that can be split, build wealth despite the handicap, not because the handicap disappeared. Because here's the final brutal truth nobody wants to say out loud. The singles tax isn't going away. It's baked into every policy, every tax bracket, every insurance algorithm. Waiting for it to be fair is like waiting for your landlord to voluntarily lower your rent. It's not happening. So, stop waiting for permission to optimize your life around the reality you're actually living in. That's not giving up. That's just refusing to be the sucker at the table anymore.